California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and you know, for almost 20 years now we've been traveling all over our state together. We've met a lot of nice people and seen a lot of spectacular natural wonder. And nothing we have seen in all of those years is any more beautiful and any more spectacular than this site right here. Look all around here. We're looking at Mono Lake up here in the Eastern Sierra. This is a very special place. We came here early on in the history of California's Gold, back in the early 1990s. I think it was 1992, and spent a wonderful day here. But this place is so special that we have come back to visit Mono Lake again. And what we're going to do in this 1 hour special, we're going to go back in time to 1992 and revisit, take another look at that adventure we had here at Mono Lake. And then for the second half of the program, we'll be here at Mono Lake as it is today. And believe me, there have been many positive developments. Many great stories have taken place here since we were here last back in the early 90s. So here it is. Hold on tight, because we're going way back in time to 1992 as we were visiting beautiful Mono Lake. And then we'll be back in a few minutes, 30 minutes, for a Mono Lake update.
California, here I come, right back where I started from, where bowers of flowers bloom in the sun. Each morning at dawning, birdies sing and everything. A sun-kissed mist says, don't be late. That's why I can hardly wait. Open up that golden gate, California, here I come.
It's one of the oldest lakes in North America, over 700,000 years old. An ancient lake that's part of what used to be a huge ancient sea. It's a lake with no outlet. Its water is alkaline, 3 times saltier than the Pacific Ocean. And its landscape in places is like something from another planet. In fact, when seeing it for the first time, Mark Twain called it California's Dead Sea. Well, this isn't the Dead Sea. This is Mono Lake, located in the Eastern Sierra. And it's one of our state's true treasures. A treasure that over the past half-century has been disappearing. You see, back in 1941, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power built an aqueduct system to collect fresh water from the 4 mountain streams feeding water into the lake. And since then, the lake has dropped over 40 feet. Now, I'd always heard about Mono Lake, always wanted to see it firsthand. And finally, I got the opportunity. Ended up spending a week there being shown around by people who truly love the place. And as you'll discover with me, a visit to Mono Lake is truly an adventure you'll never forget.
Now here are the famous flies I've been hearing about so much.
Right.
And this is kind of a weird feeling to be walking in a swarm of, I don't know whether the camera can pick this up or not. Look at them over here. They're so thick. Look at this. What is the
But
story
did you
here?
notice there's like a force field that keeps them away from you? They just stay a certain distance. When the birds come to eat these, they'll be walking right through like this, and the flies move away, but every so often the beak is quicker than the fly. This is food for a lot of birds. These are called brine flies or alkali flies, and they live in the water of the lake. They go underwater to lay their eggs, and the eggs hatch into a larva. There's a pupa stage, and then the flies are on the shore. And isn't it nice that they don't like people? You know?
So they never get on people.
I think they think people
This
are...
is amazing.
I think they think people are yucky and they don't want to touch them. You don't want us to touch them. You know,
Now,
so.
are they unique to Mono Lake?
No, brine flies are found in other areas, but this kind of fly is really only found abundantly in one other lake, one in Oregon, called the Ebert Lake.
And what is their beneficial, I mean, you know, what do they do?
They fit into the food chain here. If you look at the birds out here, the birds are pecking, and then they're either eating flies themselves or the shrimp that are in the lake, the brine shrimp. And they eat the birds eat the adult flies. They also eat the fly larva that's in the water swimming, the little wormy guys.
Wow. Look at this. You can hear them, but they won't light on you at all. This is very strange, but it's all part of the chain.
Yeah, all part of the very simple but unique food chain at Mono Lake. We have no fish here. The water is too salty and too alkaline for fish. And we really only have two kinds of animal forms. We have the shrimp and the fly, and that is it that lives in the water. But they are incredibly abundant. Though there aren't very many kinds, they're enormous quantity, and that's why there's over 1 million birds that can come and feed on the food that's in the lake.
So the birds would eat these flies or the shrimp that are out there.
That's right.
Where are the shrimp? Could we see the shrimp from here?
Well, yes, I think we need to get into some cleaner water where we can see into the bottom better, where there isn't so much soap suds. This is, by the way, this isn't pollution. This is soap from the water of the lake. This lake has...
What do you mean soap?
Well, this lake, if you want the recipe for Mono Lake, you'd put in salt in water, but also baking soda, lots and lots of sodium bicarbonate, that stuff we cook with, and that sometimes people wash in, and people actually used to come and wash in Mono Lake sometimes. There's a lot of baking soda here. So when the wind makes waves, we get soap suds formed.
Now, what if I tasted this water right now?
Go ahead. If you've got a good palate, you should be able to taste the salt and that bitter baking soda taste.
See, I can't taste the salt at all. I thought it was going to be real salty.
I'll reach out farther. And there's probably some fresh water. We had a lot of rain yesterday. There's a fresh water layer. There.
There's the salt.
We had rain yesterday, so there's a freshwater layer that's lighter than the salt water that's floating on top.
What are you
today.
laughing about? Well, look at this man. What are you laughing about back here? What are you laughing about?
Now,
You couldn't taste the salt.
have you tasted it?
Have you tasted it yet?
No.
You should. It's a good
Put
way to
your finger in
understand
there
this
and let me
lake.
laugh at you. See, it's got a... This has got a real...
Not bad.
This is really salty. I saw a chart somewhere that said this is saltier than the ocean.
It's about almost 3 times as salty as the ocean today. Before the diversions began that have changed Mono Lake, it was about half as salty. There's half as much water today, so the lake gets saltier as it shrinks. The flies are not as big as they used to be because it's saltier water. It's harder for them to live in saltier and saltier water. And there aren't as many as there used to be. That's all part of the problems of Mono Lake right now.
That taste is still in my mouth. That is a really salty taste. Let me say goodbye. Goodbye. Enjoyed meeting you. Okay. Enjoy your day. Man laughing at me. Now this is the tufa.
Right? And what's a tufa is a common question.
What is it? Well, I mean, at first glance, it looks like we're standing on the moon. This is the most interesting landscape I think I've ever seen, and I guess the question does beg itself, what is this stuff?
It all goes back to the water in the lake, this strange water with the minerals in it. Tufa is a formation where springs, wherever you see these tufa, there were springs coming out of the ground, and the lake covered this area up, and a reaction occurred between the spring water and the lake water. So
Between the salt water and the fresh water.
That's right. The fresh water has some calcium, the salt water has the baking soda, the carbonates, and this is calcium carbonate. and it builds up around the springs and grows upwards because the fresh water is trying to get up on top of the salt water to float on top of it. It's lighter, and so it heads that way.
So all of this used to be completely covered by water.
There's two things you know wherever you see a tufa, that had to have been, Mono Lake had to have been there, and then that other source of water, the fresh water, also had to have been coming up in that same area.
Well, this is certainly spectacular, and you can see it not only here on land, but there's some of it sticking up out of the water as well.
We've done some diving out there, and some of those are probably in 30 feet of water, so that the tower itself is maybe 50, 60 feet tall from the bottom.
How do these things age? Do they age well? How long have they been out here like this?
Well, these have been exposed since 1941, gradually more and more exposed. But so they've only been out of the lake for, you know, somewhere between 10 and 50 years or whatever. They are subject to erosion from the weather, the rain and the ice and the snow. But our biggest concern we found after 10 years of monitoring the Tufa towers is that people climbing and stepping on them is our biggest problem. And so we ask people to be very careful and, of course, not take pieces away.
Well, we certainly have enough interest in everybody climbing around here and traveling all around. And
see all of this that looks fallen right here? That's not people. A few years ago, in the early 1980s, the lake rose. We had these very wet years, and it actually toppled some towers as it rose, and then of course it's dropped again. So this is not so much people that cause this. Some people get disturbed if they see the fallen ones.
Is this the best place to come in the lake to see the tufa?
This spot we call the South Tufa area is, yes, the best place. There are about 6 major areas similar to this of tufa around the lake where it's really concentrated, but most of the others are wet because of those springs that form the tufa, and for some reason this area is much drier and it makes it easier to explore.
Yeah.
But there are other spots to explore at the lake. And this,
can we explore around the corner and
certainly
see what's back
best
there?
What I think is the best area of tufa is on around the corner here.
Okay. Wait a minute, I guess I better leave my tufa here.
Yeah, we should
don't want
to. Why don't we go this way?
Take any.
Right here.
Okay, we're going to wander through the tufa and go to your favorite spot?
Yeah, you could say that. I've got a few other favorites that I don't take everybody to. But,
oh, look. Look at this.
Now I want you to imagine this underwater. We're going to, like you're snorkeling or scuba diving through here, and turn it all blue and make brine shrimp be swimming around, take the bushes away, and think about that. And this is just an incredible forest.
So all of this was underwater, and like you say, there were shrimp swimming all around through it.
And
look at these things.
And everywhere here there would be a spring. There'd be a freshwater spring heading up towards the top of the lake through the salt water.
Wait a minute. You mean the water would actually literally be coming out of these formations?
Yes, that's how they form. Through the inside, the water would come out at the top and add more, and then it will come around on the outside too and add on to the outside, but primarily growing upwards right at that point.
Now, does this mean there's water down there now? Springs that just...
As we look into the shoreline now, we find that the spring water, a lot of it, the springs are still there, but they're out under the lake now. Instead of coming up here, they wait until we get under the lake water and come out there.
Look at this one. Now, how fragile is this?
It's fragile enough that I wouldn't want anybody to try to climb it. It would break it. But it's been sitting here for 10 years, and we've been monitoring these for that long, and they're doing okay in the weather. They
look like stalactites.
Yes, or stalagmites.
I guess you hear stalagmites coming up and stalactites.
Chemically, they're the same, calcium carbonate, but the process is different in a cave when these drips form and form.
Look at all
deposits.
this. This just goes on and on and on as far as you can see. This has to be what everybody comments on the most.
This Tufa area is, I think, one of the most photographed areas at the lake, and most of the photography you see, I think, comes from this area. But there are other spots to explore, and we like people to know that when you come, see the South Tufa area, and then take off on your own and find some of these other spots that are worth finding. And there's some incredible discoveries waiting out there.
Our Mono Lake adventure continues with a boat ride, courtesy of Larry Ford, a naturalist with the U.S. Forest Service. who took me out to the middle of the lake to Paoa Island, which is volcanic and only about 200 years old. It looked like something out of Planet of the Apes to me. Pretty rugged terrain. Now, we were there to visit what's left of a goat ranch, which operated on the island from 1917 to 1921. Of course, no one lives on the island these days, and walking through the dilapidated, deserted buildings was kind of eerie.
Look at this. Look what I found. A shoe. Now that's a historic shoe.
Right.
It's been hanging there since they left in 1920. There's all kind of stuff.
Watch out for the nails.
An empty tin can. Boy, this is real historic stuff. The only thing more historic than the tin can is the outhouse over there. We're now getting ready to harvest some brine shrimp. Look at them down here, they're everywhere. Boy, they are little.
Now, once we left the island, Larry gave me an up-close and personal look at some of the estimated 4 trillion tiny little brine shrimp which call Mono Lake home.
Look at this. There you go. You got 3 of them right there, just swimming around.
That's a mated pair.
They're mating?
They're mating.
In my hand?
In your hand.
Gosh. Just my luck to pick up a pair of mating brine shrimp.
Heading back to shore, Larry carefully navigated the boat through some submerged tufa, which gave me a chance to actually touch one.
What does that feel like? Is it slimy? Is it...
Well, one way to find out, isn't there?
Well, I'm just curious as to what it's gonna... It's got a lot of crystals in it. It's reflecting in the water. Oh, yeah. It's got a crystal feel to it. I didn't know they had that crystal stuff in there.
Right, it's a...
Look, it's reflecting in the light. Mm-hmm. And they're the ever-present brine shrimp all around it. Wow. Janet, in addition to being an absolutely beautiful lake to look at, this lake is a home to a lot of different kind of birds, and since you are the bird lady around here, tell us a little bit about the birds, starting, I guess, with the gulls who are all around us right now.
Right, the gulls are the most common sight, especially in the summertime, and they're California gulls. There's lots of different kinds of gulls in California, but this particular species is called the California gull. And about 90% of this particular bird, they live along the coast and they fly over here to Mono Lake to nest here, 90% of the population. So chances are, if you see a bird along the California coast that's a California gull, it will have been born at Mono Lake.
It will have been born right here.
And a lot of people are real surprised to see gulls up in the mountains at high altitude. They fly around up at Bodie and the high peaks, and they just, that's how they're set up to deal with their nesting, is to come inland.
Now, the gulls are just here during the summer to nest?
Well, it's always a sign of spring when the first gull comes, which is usually sometime late March, early April. And they gradually filter in, then they go over to the islands to nest.
And they're protected over there, right?
Well, that's a whole other story about the islands. As the lake has dropped, the islands have become more and more exposed and closer to the shore, which allows predators to get across.
Like coyotes.
Mostly coyotes. And right now, after the 6 years of drought, there isn't a whole lot of water protecting them. So we're really hoping for a good winter this coming year. That's what we really need, is a couple good winters, bring the water level up.
Now, how many gulls come here during the year?
About 50,000 adult gulls.
50,000.
And they come because of this incredible food supply. The lake is just like a bowl of soup for them in this time of year. There's shrimp. You can see if they're putting their beaks in kind of far, like that one there.
Yeah, they look like they're happy gulls out there.
They are.
Well-fed, happy, fat gulls.
Eating lots of shrimp and flies.
Now, when we're not talking about gulls, though, we're talking about a lot of other birds here.
Right, the gulls are the most visible, but actually the most numerous bird that comes to Mono Lake is the eared grebe, which is a little bird that looks kind of like a little black duck. You see it usually kind of far out on the lake, And the reason they're called eared grebes is in breeding plumage, they have little tufts of yellow feathers on the sides of their head. And they occur, there's close to 1 million of them here in the fall. The whole lake is just peppered with little black bodies.
Really?
And they just feed here for a month or two, then they go down to Baja California, to Mexico for the winter.
Okay.
And another migrant that we are just starting to see is the phalarope with a PH. And they are a migrant that nests up in Canada, in Washington State. They come down to Mono Lake, and they're just a small little bird. And they're here for about 6 weeks, and in that time, they double their body weight from 1 ounce to 2 ounces. They molt all their feathers, grow new feathers, and have enough energy to fly 2,000 miles nonstop to Bolivia and Peru for the winter.
Really?
So it's just, that gives you an idea of just how rich of a food source this is, for them to be able to do all that.
So this lake really has been is a major stop, plays a major role in the lives of a lot of birds.
It's like a great big gas station for birds that they come by and fill up and go on their way. Some of them only stay a few days, some of them stay for months, some of them stay all year.
Now I'm standing here on the banks of a freshwater stream that is flowing down out of the Sierra into Mono Lake. I'm here with Steve Holland from the Forest Service, and Steve is having an outing today with a group of junior rangers. And why did you bring them to this creek?
Well, for years this creek was dry. When water, right now where we're standing, about 50 years ago, we used to be under 40 feet of water, and to get back to the shoreline, we'd have to swim about half a mile. After the diversions began, this creek was basically completely dry until a few years ago, when they started to re-water it. And since then, as the water's flowing down the creeks, the plants and the wildflowers are starting to come back. Lots of the animals and birds that feed on the shoreline here are coming back to this region.
So what you're saying is that this creek, in just the last couple of years, has literally come back to life.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's amazing how this place used to look just 10 years ago. And
dry and barren and nothing. Was this totally dry 10 years ago?
Yes, yeah. 10 years ago it was completely dry except for real heavy winters. They would let water down here. But 10 years ago it was awash, basically.
Now there are 5 creeks like this, and these all come out of the Sierra. This is all snow melt and rain and all of this, fresh water. And Louis, can we just turn around and show it? Because look, it just flows right into Mono Lake. This is where the lake gets its water.
Yeah, as the water from, this is just one part of Levine Creek. There's another branch of it just south of here. And the other creeks, as they flow into the lake, they keep the lake from dropping. And that protects the brine shrimp and the brine flies and the birds from the increasing salinity, and protects the whole ecosystem. So these streams really are a very important part of the whole ecosystem.
Well, if these streams weren't flowing right now, this lake would be totally dead, wouldn't it?
If the streams weren't flowing, the lake would be dropping at about a rate of 2 feet a year.
Now, this is something that's going to be fun. What are we doing now? What are they doing now? Because we're not doing it.
Yeah, they're going to go swimming in Mono Lake. Yeah, they're going to head out there and feel the briny water around them and the shrimp swimming about them, and have their feet float up to the surface. And
does that sound pretty exciting to you?
Yeah!
Now, has anybody been swimming in Mono Lake before?
No!
So this is going to be the first. What do you think it's going to feel like?
I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to try it. What do you think it's going to feel like?
Slimy?
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah!
Everybody's ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3, go! Oh boy, swimming in Mono Lake. Now, is this something that you don't really see this very often, do you?
No, a lot of people don't think you can swim in it. They look at the flies and the shrimp, and they don't think it's like a yuck. I don't want to go swimming in it. It usually takes getting in the first time there to realize that there's no swimming experience quite like it.
It is so quiet out here in the morning.
Well, that's why I brought you out here. For one thing, If we came out a little later, we may have to contend with all of the wind coming up and the waves. And it can be pretty rough out here in a canoe. But it's one of the most beautiful times of day out here. Mono Lake's a place that you can't just show up and appreciate necessarily on a single visit. If you come out in the noonday sun and walk down to the shore from your car, you probably aren't going to get the feeling for the place that a lot of us have that live here all year round. Get to see the lake at sunrise or sunset, or camp out on the shore on a full moon.
We ended our visit to Mono Lake by getting up at sunrise, getting in a canoe, and paddling across its glassy waters. Our guide was John Cain, a staff member of the Mono Lake Committee, a nonprofit citizens group dedicated to saving this beautiful place.
For years, I think most people have just driven right by Mono Lake because we'd all been programmed that it wasn't a place worth stopping. And I think that's a big part of what the Mono Lake Committee has done, is educated people about how beautiful Mono Lake is and the importance of Mono Lake.
Yeah, because on one level, I mean, technically speaking, it's just a big salty lake, you know, without much life around it.
I think that's what you see if you drive down 395, and or even if you just look at the lake from the town of Lee Vining. But you come down and you start seeing the life, and for me, the life I see in the lake, working to restore the lake, I try to imagine what it was like historically. Great creeks, great streams feeding the lake with vast wetlands and millions of waterfowl coming. Certainly hundreds of thousands, and up to 1 million would come every year, ducks and geese. And I think of the level of the lake being 40 feet higher. And I think it's a beautiful place now on all levels. But when I think back to what it was like, I sort of feel like I missed out. It's a unique ecosystem. And if I could never see Mono Lake again, I would always be much more comfortable knowing that it could live on forever. It's been here for 1 million years. It's probably the oldest lake in North America. People need to come and give Mono Lake a chance. I can understand how some people may think that it's not what they expected to see when they come to a lake. Most people expect to see something like Lake Tahoe with trees all around it. But Mono Lake is unique, and you have to look into its waters. You have to see the reflection of sunsets.
You have to feel what this place is all about. It's very special.
Yeah.
Well, time has passed. In fact, it's been over 15 years since we were here at Mono Lake, but we have now come back to Mono Lake, and we're hooking up again, just like we did back in the early 1990s with Dave Carle. Back then you were a state park ranger. Now you're a retired state park ranger.
I brought my hat just to say that. And how many years has it been? 15 years.
Over 15 years. 15. And we're doing it right here. We're starting this second, kind of this update, the second program here, because isn't this, well, this isn't where we were standing 15 years ago. We were standing somewhere out there.
We would have to be swimming in 8 feet of water to be where we were 15 years ago right now. But straight out here, we walked this shoreline, that shoreline at the time.
Wow.
And it's still a beautiful shoreline, it's just different.
Well, and it's different in a good way, because there have been some positive changes since we were here in the early 1990s.
And that's because in 1994, the decision was made to start raising the lake, bringing it back up higher. We aren't all the way back yet. It's going to be, I can show you where it is a little bit back up this way, but by bringing the lake up even this much higher, The salinity levels have dropped back. It was like 20 years earlier that the last time the lake had ever been at this salinity level. That's helping all of the things living in the lake.
Well, it's absolutely spectacular, and 8 feet is kind of hard to judge as to just how much that means all the way around the lake, but that's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot, and filling the lake is an interesting challenge, because one of the things people often don't grasp here at Mono Lake, among many of the strange things of it, is that it's a vast sea. It is, if you were to go all the way around the lake today by driving a vehicle on the roads, it'd be a 45-mile trip. And that means it's big. And so every foot that you raise the lake, that's a tremendous amount of water that it takes.
So we put a lot of water in here.
Well, we put a lot, and yet we have quite a ways to go. It's a work in progress, and yet when the lake was really low, back when you were here before, it was at a point where all it took was letting the streams do what they had always done here. And it was a matter of the balance of evaporating water and how much water comes in, and that determines how big the lake will be.
Now more streams are putting more water back in the lake.
4 of the streams that had been diverted and had been completely diverted are now putting their water, or most of their water. Some of the water still goes to Los Angeles. This was
sure, we still got to have water in Los Angeles.
And this was a compromise decision, a recognition that start with how much does this lake need to stay alive and not die, not become the California Dead Sea ever. But once you got that, how much then can be shared with the city of Los Angeles? That was the decision-making process.
And while we're standing here talking, I'm looking right over your shoulder. The flies are still here. Remember 15 years ago? That's the first thing that caught my attention. Look at these flies. They're everywhere. Look how they move.
I need a loose rock to show you.
Oh my gosh, they're everywhere.
And this is the bottom of this rock. I picked it up, some flies just flew off, and there's what they're doing. They lay their eggs, and then the little larva crawls around, and then a little pupa case forms to
hatch them out.
Yeah.
But look over here, everything we see over here, look at this.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Now, you remember, these are those flies that are so nice, they don't bother people.
Look at this.
And I'm going to put that rock right back where I found it.
Look.
Yeah.
You can hear them. Look at this. Ha! Well, the fly population is alive and well.
And those flies are bite for bite even better food for the birds than the brine shrimp, which is the other main kind of animal form that lives in Mono Lake.
Remember, one mated in my hand.
Well, it took 2.
Oh, 2 of them mated in my hand.
I do remember that moment on the old show. Was a great moment.
Yeah.
You were impressed that was happening. That's how, thank goodness, there's lots of that going on, because the shrimp have to produce eggs that become a cyst that rains down to the bottom of the lake, because by winter, when it snows here, it gets very cold, the shrimp die off, the adult shrimp.
Yeah.
But next spring, those cysts hatch, and we have trillions once again. That's a literal number. Trillions of brine shrimp that come back every year to Mono Lake. An enormous amount of food.
And you know, just standing here, whether the water is up or down, just looking out here across the water at the Tufa Towers, it's still just an absolutely spectacular sight. I had forgotten how overwhelming it is to stand here and look out at the lake like this. The wind is pushing the flies. Can we walk out there, Dave?
Yeah,
I don't want to get...
Here. You might get a little muddy.
I've never seen anything like this.
Right here.
These are all flies. Look out there
Right
at
there.
that.
I'll just look at
Oh! Look! Look at this.
Did you know, I don't think we told you this.
Wait a minute. I'm having a fly experience here.
But
Look at this.
this
Listen.
This is a visual sign of one of the things that actually we didn't know back when you first came here before. Recent years, they did the research to tell us that this lake is one of the most productive lakes in the world. Some years it has been the most productive in terms of biomass, living matter. And this is a good sign of what we're talking about.
Look at this! Look at this! This is what we saw 15 years ago. Pales in comparison. Look at this right over here. Look at them. Follow me, Cameron, right over here. Wow.
Now, do you remember? I don't know if we talked about this either. Mono Lake, the name is relevant to this. The Indians here used to gather the fly pupae, and they would not only eat it themselves, they traded it, they dried it, and they got the name Mono comes from the Yokut Indians, who are not the local Indians, but they were traded with the Kuzetica here. The Yokut word Mono is translated as the people of the flies.
Wow.
Yeah.
But when you think of flies, usually you think in negative terms. It takes coming to Mono Lake to think of flies in a positive way.
And yes, and in part of the food chain too, because we have millions of birds that take advantage of this, and that ties us by their migrations to places thousands of miles away, and all of that comes back to something that people often don't value, but
it's
a fly.
All interconnected.
A fly and the little bit of algae that the fly eats, all of that builds up to these bigger connections.
It's very rare to see this lake.
Yeah. Has he seen the flies?
你看到那个苍蝇了没有？看到苍蝇了。
Here, walk over here. Come on, let's walk over here.
Oh, okay, all right, we'll see.
We're showing them flies. Right here.
Look at that! Oh my gosh!
Those are flies.
那么多，哎呦哈！太多了。
好啊。I can't get enough of those flies. Jeff, you're used to people like me coming out here and getting excited about what we see, and there really is a lot to be excited about out here at Mono Lake these days, isn't there?
This is an amazing time. We're in the middle of the largest restoration program, going on. The lake is rising. We're getting the salinity down so that these animals can be healthier. We're restoring the streams. We got fish back. We got forests coming back. We're fixing the air quality problems here. We're doing some great stuff out here.
And all of this, when we were first here back in the early 1990s, and even before that, Mono Lake was in real trouble.
When you were here last time, there were tens of thousands of concerned people who cared about this place, but the rules were not protecting Mono Lake. And really what's changed since then is we have a whole new set of rules about water rights here and how Los Angeles can take its water. And it's a balance now between the health of the lake and providing water to the city. And we've achieved a really good balance, so we're doing both.
Through a lot of diplomatic negotiation where both sides really were talking with each other with open minds.
A lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, some litigation in there too,
Well, but you're talking about two big objects here, restoring a lake and providing enough, continuing to provide drinking water for a huge place called Los Angeles.
One of the goals always here was to make sure that the water Mono Lake needed to be protected could be replaced in LA through some positive way, and recycling of water and water conservation have been the ways the city has offset what's needed to protect the lake here.
Yeah.
And so we've really got both places in good shape, and that's what's exciting.
When you talk about the tens of thousands of people, and here we can walk still towards some of the Tufa over here, because a lot of it is still on dry ground, there really have been tens of thousands of people involved in this movement from those early days. When did the Mono Lake Committee start up?
It's our 30th anniversary year now. 1978 was when the committee was started, and we have 16,000 members, but there are many, many friends of Mono Lake beyond that out there.
So there's a lesson to all of this, that people, when they band together and decide they want to do something positive, their voices can be heard and good things can come out of it.
That's absolutely right. And I think it's a lesson. There's a lot of difficult problems out there in the world now, but this is a place where we took on a problem and found a good answer. It's good for everybody, and they're putting it into place.
And look out here. We've been here on the shore, but when you look out here across the lake, this is a huge lake. How old is it again?
Well, at least 3/4 of a million years, could be well over 1,000,000 years old.
Yeah, and it's a big lake. It's a beautiful lake, and with the breeze blowing and the little puffy clouds coming up over the Sierra off in the distance, it's a spectacular sight. It feels good.
It's going to be here for our children and grandchildren to enjoy like this. That's the exciting thing. Although a little bit higher.
Yeah.
A little bit higher next time you're here.
And I got to tell you, after 15 years, it feels good to be back at Mono Lake. Flies and all. Now, this is interesting. Right here beside the lake, we've hooked up with Jim. You're the state park ranger here now.
Yes, state park ranger.
You've got a group here with you from
France. Yeah. Some visitors, some foreign visitors from France. A lot of Europeans come to Mono Lake.
And what did they ask you about the lake? I'm sure you get almost the same questions from everybody.
The most obvious thing that you can see right now is the foam that we have on the lake shore. We had a windy event last night. We had some rain. Everything's nice and washed off. And because of the wind and the carbonates in the lake, it foams up. And you've got this beautiful sterile foam all along the shoreline.
Well, that's a ranger for you. That beautiful foam.
Beautiful, yes.
So you asked about the foam.
Yeah.
Did you think it was soap?
Yeah.
That's what people think.
That's what they think. In fact, when they go swimming in Mono Lake, they get coated. In fact, you can kind of see some on my hands, coated with the carbonates and bicarbonates that are in the lake.
Do many people go swimming? There's a fella out there. Hello, give us a wave. Come on in. Do many people go swimming in the lake?
A lot of people swim in the lake. A lot of Europeans come here for the medicinal value in the water.
See, and you can go swimming.
Yeah. You can swim in the lake.
Do you want to go swimming?
Not now.
Well, what's the water like out there?
It's a bit salty, a little buoyant.
How does your skin feel right now?
It's kind of slimy, and if you got cuts, it sort of burns a little bit.
Did you know what you were getting into?
Yeah, my car got stuck this morning, so I had to dig myself out, so I needed to wash off a little bit.
So are you sure you don't want to go in?
No.
Are you sure you don't want to go in?
No.
See, there's all this excitement going on. Look, there they are over there looking at the foam. People are fascinated. There's somebody else going in over here. People are just fascinated by what they see here.
They really are. They really are. It's a wonderful place. There's all kinds of different things you can do, study. And it's just a wonderful place to be.
And as soon as you get out of your car, you're bombarded with all of this stuff that you're not used to seeing.
All this stuff, lots of questions. People wonder what's going on here. How salty is it? Is it like the Dead Sea, which it's not. It's very much alive. And people love to swim here. It's great.
How would you describe this to someone who's never been here before?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, this is one of the most beautiful places I've been to in California. Just the land around the lake has overwhelmed me with its beauty. The lake itself, it has its like a mineral, very salty, so your skin feels like it's absorbing really, really healing qualities of the water. And it just feels great and refreshing, and it's quite beautiful. So.
You know, I have a feeling, though, it's more than just the waters that are healing, just the feel.
Yeah, the space. The space is quite profound, and it's just, look around you, really. I mean, I definitely have been touched since I've been here.
Okay, as we prepare to leave the South Tufa area of Mono Lake, we are walking down this wooden walkway because, Dave, this makes a statement right here.
It does. It's fascinating to me. Wherever the boards are, it's a place we can take the boardwalk away someday because the lake's going to cover it up. And that means where we're walking right now, we are approaching, but we're still not even up to where the plan is to raise Mono Lake in order to protect it. It's still going to be short of where it used to be way back before the diversions began, but it's a long way if you look down this boardwalk from where the water is today.
So the water is going to come all the way. How many feet is that we're talking about raising the lake from where it is now, Jeff?
Should be about 9 vertical feet to get to this spot here where we are.
So 9 vertical feet difference would fill all the way from here, that we would be on the shore right here. Those brine shrimp and those flies.
You bet. And these tufa towers will someday be sticking up out of the water.
Wow.
And these ones will still be up above the water.
Wow.
And look at this.
1963 was the last time the lake was at this elevation.
At 6,392 feet in 1963, and the dream is to bring it back here someday, and that's doable because of what you told me is happening in LA.
Well, the way LA is able to do this and protect the lake is through conservation in the city. And you'll be amazed, there's just one program the city's done. They've retrofitted old toilets with newer low flush models. They're saving more water through that single program than was ever diverted from here in total in 1 year.
You're kidding. So low flush toilets in LA.
Low flush toilets are doing a great job, and there's a whole lot more conservation that can be done.
And with each one of those conservation efforts, it brings the water further and further up, so that hopefully someday soon the water will be right here. This will be the shore. Mono Lake will have come all the way up here. Boy, this show just keeps, that means we got to come back 15 years from now.
It's a work in progress.
And now for another chapter in the Mono Lake story. And there's so many different chapters, and they're all special in their own way, but look at this. John, this is as spectacular a view of Mono Lake as I guess you can get, and it's no accident that you've got your visitor center here on this spot.
It was selected for that reason, yes.
What are we looking at here?
Well, you're looking at the western shore of Mono Lake. This right here is the Levining Creek that originates way up in the Tioga Pass area, and it's one of the 4 streams that feeds Mono Lake.
This creek right here, you can hardly see it, but that's where I went 15 years ago.
It was probably looking a little different then too, maybe a few less trees.
Yeah, it's grown up, gotten a lot thicker, and the creek has been flowing all these years.
Well, yep, since the California Water Board decision, there's now water flowing in that creek, and the creek is reviving very nicely.
Now, where was I earlier today when I was at South Tufa? That's back over this way. You can't even see it from
South
here.
Tufa is on the southern shore of Mono Lake, and you cannot see it. This moraine is in the way. It's right around the corner here, but not visible from this location.
But look at this. See, I think maybe this part of the lake gets shortchanged in a way. People all go over to see the Tufa towers.
Yes.
But look at this. This is spectacular.
You've got to come here for a sunset or a sunrise. It's a spectacular view here from our patio. And also here at the visitor center, we're able to help visitors find their way around Mono Lake and see all the incredible things there are here.
Boy, this really, and you know, the wind comes up in the afternoon here. That's part of the...
Boaters need to be careful, and it's good if boaters could stop here at the visitor center and get some information from us. We can tell them where the best places to camp are on the lake, around the lake, and outside of the area, and also inform them of some of the safety concerns they should know about before putting their boat on the lake.
Yeah, because this is deceiving, isn't it? Weather changes very quickly up here in the High Sierra.
In a matter of minutes, this lake can go from glassy calm to waves that can then cause some problems.
Excitement is building, because if you'll remember 15 years ago when we were here, Janet was the person we talked with about birds. You're still a bird person.
I still love birds.
And boy, she gets real excited now, because look at what we've got ahead of us, Janet. We've got lots of birds.
We have lots of birds. It's a great day here at Mono Lake for birds. It's a great time of year, and one of the goals of the Water Board decision was to bring up the lake to make it better for birds, and it's really exciting to see it happening.
So since we've been here, Mono Lake has become even more bird friendly.
It has. One of the goals of bringing up the lake was to make the water a little less salty, make it better for the brine shrimp, so there'd be more brine shrimp for the birds to eat, and just make the water not so extreme.
Is the whole idea for people to come here and stand on the platform and look out at the birds? Is that the deal?
It is. We designed this to be able to take out as the lake comes up, so it's designed to be able to remove it. But right now, it's here for people to enjoy, be able to set up spotting scopes and just enjoy being here by the lake. And this is really the place on the lake that's for the birds, and we want people to stay on the boardwalk.
The North Shore.
The North Shore at the State Reserve Boardwalk, right.
And I got to tell you, see, I love this because you're standing right here in the shadow of these huge mountains, so it puts everything in perspective, and once again gives you this sense of
how big it is, of how grand it is, of what's really going on here.
It really is grand. It's a really big lake, and it's a really important stopover for the birds. I mean, when they're flying through, they see this huge lake, and it's a real important place for them to stop and rest and molt, and just the incredible biomass and food available here, like a big bowl of soup. It allows them to eat enough to be able to do that long migration.
You've got it all set up here. You've got the shorebirds, you know, all set up here for people to read about. But look out here. This is still surprises me, this green belt here, this lush green area, and then looking right out here over your shoulder, this really is kind of marshy.
It really is. There's a creek that comes through here, and this place is so important for the birds because there is a fresh water source, and they can bathe, they can drink fresh water. You know, when the birds are out there all day on such a salty lake, they really need to be able to get that fresh water, bathe, get the salt off their feathers.
So they're mixing the salty water of Mono Lake with the fresh water that's coming in down through the mountains and into the lake.
And that's what's making this all green. The fresh water's coming through, and that's why the birds like it at this spot so much, because they can have the fresh water.
You know, there are so many stories here, and what I find amazing about it is that they're all interconnected.
They really are. That's what it's all about at Mono Lake. A lot of people have worked really hard. There's a lot of connections, and it's just wonderful to watch. You add water and things come back to life.
Jeff, you know, it's impossible to come out here on the water and not feel that you really are in a very special place, not only in California, but in the whole world. What are the factors that make Mono Lake so special? Because you really do feel it when you're here.
You know, I think the amazing thing about Mono Lake is it's so different from other lakes. You know, it's not a freshwater lake. It's not Lake Tahoe. Doesn't have trees on the lake shore. For many years, you know, 100 years ago, if you go back and look, people thought they were scared of the lake. You know, it's just too different. But I think we've all come to realize that it's really a remarkable place because it's a salt lake, because it's in this high desert location, and it supports millions of birds with the brine shrimp and the alkali flies. It's just different than other lakes, and that makes it very unique, and it's really just a special treat to get to discover it.
Look at this. This is something out of, it looks like something out of prehistoric times, doesn't it, Jeff?
You can imagine what it was like underwater when they were forming and the water was shooting at the tops of those.
Are these hundreds of years old, thousands of years old?
Hundreds of years old. Some tufas, tens of thousands of years old, but at this spot, probably several hundred.
Boy, when you're up close to them, oh gosh. Oh, look over here.
Every turn, there's something new to discover at Mono Lake.
You know, I think they're even more beautiful coming up out of the water like this than they were when we were walking through them on land.
I think, you know, I think that's right. That really shows, you know, they're tied to where they came from the lake, and you get to see them as a sign of the springs that formed them and how they were created.
Well, they came from the lake, and they're back in the lake, part of the lake. They've gone full cycle.
We're seeing a lot of spots around the lake as it's coming up where towers that were on land and no one really got to spend much time or enjoy them. Now they're on the lake shore or out in the water, and you know, they're beautiful, and it's a whole new experience to go and explore them.
15 years ago when I was here, I had the opportunity to hold some mating brine shrimp in my hand. Today they're in a container, but the important message, Jeff, is that the brine shrimp are definitely still here and they're alive and well.
They're alive and well, and they're probably doing a little bit better than they were when you were here last time. Lake's a little less salty, so they're probably bigger and happier, and they're still mating in the cup there too.
All right, I'm going to return the mating brine shrimp back into Mono Lake. You've got something else that's very dramatic that you're going to point out to us here.
Well, we're going to take a little measurement and see if we can figure out where you were walking last time. The lake was 8 feet lower when you were here. So if we put our stick in the ground here, that's only about 4 feet here, and we're floating out away from the tufa. So you were probably off to our left here some distance. walking on the sand at that time.
But all of this, where we are right now,
all this was dry land.
Now we've come to one of the most interesting places in the whole lake, because this actually shows us how these tufa towers are formed. What are we looking at, Jeff?
This is a tufa tower in the act of creation. There's a spring bubbling up right through the center of this tower that's underwater. You can see the bubbles coming up and the top of the lake rippling. And that's how these towers form, when the freshwater springs mix with the lake water.
So there's still tufa towers being formed at Mono Lake.
That's right. And this one right here is actually gone back into the water as the lake has risen. So it's being rejuvenated from 10, 20, 30 years out of the lake.
See, I thought, is this warm water or it's cold water? It's warm water.
It could be warm. We've got some warm springs along here, absolutely.
Oh, well, let's don't hit it. So we're right over it.
We're right over it.
Oh my gosh. This is so interesting to see it up close like this, and to realize that the towers have been formed like this for literally thousands of years, and they're still being formed exactly the same way today.
There aren't many places left in California where you can come and see this much wildlife and look at views that are 50, 60 miles in the distance, and just get a sense of the grandeur of the area, of the whole state, really. I mean, California is remarkably diverse, and Mono Lake is just an outstanding example of that.
Well, Mono Lake is an example of the best our state can be on many levels. Not only its natural beauty, but the fact that so many people care about preserving this natural beauty.
I think that Mono Lake's really a hopeful symbol for the state. We've got so many hard challenges that we have to face, water supply and climate change, but Mono Lake was considered to be an unsolvable problem, the water diversions from here. And in the 1970s, it was written off. There's nothing you could do about it. Today, the lake's protected, and not at the expense of Los Angeles. They've got the water they need. That's an amazing solution that we're putting into place year by year here. And I think it's a reason to hope we can solve other huge problems that we face and seem unsolvable, but you work your way at it and you can do it.
California, here I come, right back where I started from, where bowers of flowers bloom in the sun. Each morning at dawning, birdies sing and everything. A sun-kissed mist says, don't be late. That's why I can hardly wait. Open up that golden gate, California, here I come.
What a beautiful place. You gotta go see Mono Lake for yourself. And that trip up Highway 395 is as beautiful a drive as you'll ever take in California. Now, if you'd like to go on this particular adventure again, share it with family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library. It's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.